there, fellow YouTubers and ship geeks alike. This is your old friend Common Urban here, and I've got another book review for you. And you're thinking, you got another book review? Like, yep. I'm always reading books, and I like to give you a review of them. And this is actually another coffee table book, as they're called, because of the size of it, written by the legendary maritime historian John Maxtone Graham. And the last time I actually gave a review over a coffee table book, which was SS United States, Red, White, and Blue Remain Forever, I kind of gave it a sharp review, I guess you could say, a sharp review. Kind of, but, I was watching that video, and there wasn't no likes on it, and there was a dislike, so I figured maybe I did something wrong. So I'm probably going to reread that book, and I'll probably give you a more of a better review on that, I hope, and then I'll do that here soon. But the book I'm going to review to you is France/Norway. And what's really interesting about this book is the fact it's about two ships. One ship that became two. And it's actually a really unique story, France/Norway. France's last liner, Norway's first mega cruise ship. And what's really interesting about this book is because it's basically, it's like the history of not one but two ships, because as you know, the France later on lived on to be the Norway. And it's actually a very interesting book, and basically the book takes you from the very beginning to chapter 2, which is basically where the true story of the ship begins. Chapter 2, fourth of the 1,000-Foot Club. Now thinking of the 1,000-Foot Club, well, the 1,000-Foot Club was a special group of ships that were in this league, and there actually had been 4 in the history of the great ocean liners. The first one was the Normandy, the second was the Queen Mary, and the third was the Queen Elizabeth. And now here in the early mid-1960s, you had the 4th final ship of this type of class enter this club, which was the France. And throughout this book here, especially in the early parts of the book, John Maxtone Graham actually does a lot of comparisons of the France with the elder ship, the Normandy, which, if I can read to you in his own words here. Why? It says right here, readers of this volume might find it useful to pre-use my book Normandy of 2007, which I've read, and I'll have to get a copy of it, but I'll give you a book review of it. Time and again she reappears throughout these pages, a ghost forever haunting her successor. Throughout France, though Frances Hall was more graceful of the two, she boasted none of Normandy's internal daring. So, and that's what basically, and it's true, there's a lot about the Normandy throughout these pages, because, like he said, the Normandy was a ghost, haunting the France. And even though the France had more of a sleeker, more leaner hull, which had been said, her hull and stuff was more, if I can find it here, I read it somewhere around here. It said that her hull was more of the tonnage that was being released during the earlier turn of the century, which, if I can find it, Skyhooks. Well, let's see. Right here. No, wait, that's not it. But anyway, unlike the Normandy, which was a lot, because she had a wider midsection than the France. The France was leaner. I guess you could say she was leaner than her right here. Right here it is. From the earliest days of construction on the Cal de l'Ascent, alongside a fitting out pier or maneuvered into form Joblet, France's graceful hull astonished. So in service, steaming between Havre's breakwaters, being nudged alongside Southampton's ocean terminal, or undocking from Pier 88 to slide stern first into the North River. Its stunning length materialized with the slinging flourish of a rapier being withdrawn from its scabbard. There was not a trace of Normandy's bloated midship spread. Rather, her sinuous form suggested a slender, muscled thoroughbred at 1,035 feet overall with a width of 110 feet. France's length to beam ratio was 9.3, reminiscent of the dimensions of Pinhoyt's pencil-slim early 20th century tonnage, which I actually did look into that. Sure enough, the early French ships were long and very narrow, so it's kind of fitting that they built their last liner was built based on those kind of lines. And basically, it tells you about the ship's early introduction into service, which I can read one line here, which this one sticks out to me just because of my association with the SS United States. It says here, a large banner reading "Welcome SS France" was draped across the pier's apron. Behind it shivered a capacity crowd of New Yorkers. New York's Department of Sanitation band serenaded the vessel's arrival with a gloved La Marseillaise. Moored south at Pier 86, the United States boomed a welcoming salute, which Commander Crosland, preoccupied with docking, was too busy to acknowledge. Which, some people could say that could be a snuff against the French, which, honestly, from what I've read about Commander Crozot, which is the first commanding officer of the France, he wasn't that type of gentleman. He was the kind of guy that would have saluted other ships in the harbor, but because being a maiden voyage and with a hectic docking schedule they had to put up with, I can see that he would have overlooked that. And in the next chapter, which chapter 6 here, 12 lavish years, this was all the years that the France was in service. And then there's one chapter here called Demise 1, Part 1. This was the demise of the France. And basically her 5 or 6 some odd years of layup and stuff, and then her eventual purchase by Knut Udstein Kolster, which was he was the owner of Norwegian Caribbean Lines, as it was called at the time. And with his purchase of the ship, and with her towing to Germany for her conversion, which is what this is about, her conversion from a French to a Norwegian ship. And it gives a pretty detail of what they did. And if you study both the France and the Norway, you can definitely tell the differences that they've done to the ships. One of the biggest differences is the layout of the stern. That is the stern deck of the Norway versus the stern deck of the France. So, like I said, with this book, John Maxtone Graham knew the history of this ship because he sailed not just on France, but he sailed on Norway, and he met passengers and crew that were, from both lives of the ship. So that's what makes this book such a very interesting read, not just because from his point of view, but from the point of view of a bunch of other people. As you can see, there's this picture of the Norway, early picture of the Norway, because in later years she was refitted again with with more balcony rooms and stuff, which her final last configuration was this, with a bunch of decks and stuff stacked on top of her like a cake. So, and then there's chapter 2, Demise 2. And basically this talks about the boiler explosion, which there is, and right here, I'll read it to you, this little part. It says, at 6:37 a.m., there was what one crewman described as a bump. Chief Engineer Steiner Schoenhahn heard 2 impacts, a small one followed by a larger. A control room engineer suggested simply a bang. Fiona McKenzie, a Sage Theater stage manager, remembers that the ship shook and then went quiet. Too quiet, she felt. Peruvian assistant purser Rocco Rania, helping immigration officers, felt the same shake. Elanco Harris, the captain's Jamaican waiter, was woken up in his Norway deck cabin by a jolt, followed by the ship jolting. On the opposite side of government cut, a couple bound on a cruise later that day were videotaping Dodge Island. Inevitably, they captured Norway's explosion. 6 years later, YouTube still screens it. The image was replayed all day throughout Miami news broadcast. Basically, what happened was the boilers got to a certain condition where they got bad and stuff, and they just exploded because the boilers were old and stuff, and they were ill maintenance. And from there, the epilogue, which is called Blue Lady, that's what she was called in her later years, before, right up to the time when she was cut up for scrap. And so ends, the life of two famous ships. And to me, that's really sad, honestly, because, even though that happened, they could have done something with her. But, from reading this book here and stuff, it really made me understand the history of both the France and the Norway a lot better. And that's the thing with John Maxtone Graham, his writing and stuff, it's so, he's so detailed on a lot of his stuff because, he witnessed a lot of these ships firsthand. A lot of the famous ships we talk about, he's seen them firsthand, like Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth, France, United States. He's seen a lot of them ships firsthand, so he can write complete stories on them. And that's why I think if you really want to learn more about the France and the Norway, this book is the one to get. And for my review of it, I will give it a 10 overall, just because it's complete, it's very descriptive, and finally, it's an entertaining book to read. I read that book in less than 2 days. That big book like that I read in 2 days. So, but I hope you enjoyed the review, and like I said earlier in the end of the video, or actually, I didn't. I don't think I did. I did a review a while back about his SS United States book, and it really wasn't that great of a review, and I've actually had a couple of dislike videos on there, which I don't really like. I'll probably reread that book again and give you an updated review on it, so I'll do that. So I hope I get to do that soon, and until then, this is your old friend Commodore Urban, saying have smooth seas and clear skies, and please remember, if you like the video, hit the like button. If you enjoy my channel, hit the subscribe button. And finally, if you got any questions or comments, leave them down below. I'll see you real soon.